All right, part 3. So we talked about lines, we talked about shapes, we talked about colors. Let's talk a little bit about texture and some painting styles. So which one of your 5 senses does texture appeal to? What do you want to do to it if you see something all rough and bumpy? Well, you kind of want to touch it, right? I know I do. I'm really bad about that. I always want to touch everything in the store. So I want to feel how soft it is, how bumpy it is, if it's wet, blah, blah, blah. That's just me, okay? It's not always what you see. They kind of have effects on all your 5 senses. Sometimes you want to touch it. So texture refers to the surface characteristics of an object, usually described as rough, polished, hard, soft, firm, fluffy, coarse, fine, shiny, or matte. Girls, what does matte mean? Why do we buy matte lipstick? Which I hate because it's so dry. Blech. It makes our lips look, what? Flat and not shiny, okay? But it's also very drying and I don't like it. But that's that kind of look that you want to go for sometimes. And it's associated with tactile sense of touch. So there's 2 types of texture. There's actual texture, where the actual surface or quality is a real object. And then there's simulated. So the painting creates that illusion of texture. Anybody know who this is? Based on the painting style, very similar to one of my favorite paintings in the whole wide world. This is Vincent van Gogh. So he also painted Starry Night. He painted with a knife to get this texture within his painting. Probably not a good idea since he cut his ear off, right? Probably shouldn't have given him a knife, but it sure did make a really cool texture on his paintings. So then there's content. Those C words I told you would haunt you again, but you know them. Content's the subject matter of a work of art. Content refers to the themes, values, or ideas, and it's distinct from form. So here's 5 different works of art, and they all have the same content, but they all look very, very different. So then we're going to learn some terms in a few minutes about some different styles that artists use to make these different, the content seem different. So first one, naturalistic, depicting figures and objects more or less how we see them. So this is John James Audubon, okay? He was the first guy to kind of travel around America and document all the species of birds that lived here. Now, he traveled in Louisiana and lived in Louisiana for a while. He spent a lot of time at Oakley Plantation in St. Francisville. He taught the daughters there how to draw and paint in trade for room and board and payment. He was like their tutor. Because, all girls did back then was learn music and paint. They weren't supposed to go to real school. In exchange for him to walk the plantation and document all the birds and stuff that live there. And so, is it easy to document birds and paint birds? Not while they're alive, is it? No. So, he ended up killing them. He was also a taxidermist, and he would stuff them, and then they would be still. Okay, so he could paint them. But he's known as a, nature conservative and kind of bringing attention to all these species so we don't, let them go extinct. And he painted them all. There's a lot of his works out there. So he did all kind of birds. He did flamingos, swans, but painted them in their natural habitat. Here we go. All right, realistic, depicting figures and objects to resemble their actual appearance. So here's our Magritte artist, the one that did the apple in front of the face. He also did the same guy with no face whatsoever. And then he did the "This is not a pipe." Well, this is not an apple, okay? But it's a picture of an apple. But he painted them very realistically to resemble their actual appearance, even though they're not real objects. Then there's illusionistic. So they're depicting figures and objects in the space they occupy so convincingly that an appearance of reality is achieved. So Dwayne Hansen was an artist, and he was really into depicting human figures super realistically. So this man that he created is so realistic, and he sits in the hallway of a museum in London. People have been known to sit next to the guy and start talking to him because they think he's a real guy. But it's just a sculpture of a real guy. So kind of interesting. I love these chalk drawings that some people do in like city streets where it looks like you're gonna fall off even though it's just a regular city sidewalk. Really, really cool. All right, then there's idealized, depicting an object according to an accepted standard of beauty. I call this six-pack ab art. Okay, that's not a real thing. That's my term. But when you see a sculpture or a painting and they're rocking some six-pack abs, you know this is an idealized painting. So they're painting the idealized or sculpting the idealized human figure in their painting. So this is the statue of David created by Michelangelo, who also painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Remember we talked about the creation of Adam with the two fingers touching each other? So he also did this one. It's 17 foot tall. That's really big, okay? Male, and he's representing the biblical hero David, and it's in Florence, Italy. Then there's stylized, depicting certain features as non-organic surface elements rather than realistically. So this part right here is her hair. Then they have, her eyes and her nose in there. There's a lot of seen with a lot of like African or ancient Indian art. Okay, that's where you're gonna see an Egyptian art. A lot of stylized figures. Then there's romanticized, depicting a subject in a nostalgic or emotional, fanciful, or mysterious way. Remember we looked at this painting a while back, the execution of Lady Jane Grey, where she was Queen of England for about 9 days, and then they decided that she was committing treason and all kinds of stuff, and that she had to die. So he painted the scene where they're about to cut her head off. Well, probably in real life, she wasn't wearing a beautiful white, unsoiled dress with beautiful skin and in a nice kind of little setting here, okay? It's all done in a very romanticized way because it was probably a whole lot more graphic than this. Okay, then there's non-representational or non-figurative. This is the opposite of representational. It's not realistic at all. The work does not represent or depict any figure. So this is where your works by like Jackson Pollock. Remember we saw Autumn Rhythm earlier in the semester where it's just a bunch of paint splatters everywhere on a huge canvas. Okay, so it's non-representational of any specific object. And then abstract, we just talked about that. Abstract describes forms that do not or accurately depict real objects, but the essence of that object or how you feel about it. So here's Mondrian, does a lot of perpendicular lines, okay? So his works represent a lot of peace and spirituality, a lot of balance going on here. Which one would you say this is? Turn your paper and let's see if you can figure out just by looking at them what type they are. So it looks like you're about to fall off of a waterfall. So you know you're on a sidewalk. So this one's illusionistic. What about this one? It's in its natural habitat, so it is naturalistic. This one, bunch of paint splatters. So can't really tell what the subject is, right? So it's non-representational. Okay, I see some six-pack abs in here. So if it's six-pack abs going on, we know they're idealized. Okay, this one, Ooh, looks super realistic, except for the signature up here. So we have a realistic. Now Egyptian art uses a lot of just stylized type features. So we know this is stylized. And this one, he's glancing off into the future and it's all foggy and he's seeing vast areas and it's all mysterious. So it is romanticized. Okay, and this one we have some curvy lines and some vertical lines. And we know that means gracefulness and powerful. So we know it's got to be about something, but we don't know what that object is. So it is abstract. Okay, did you get all those right? You probably did. You're pretty smart cookies. Next time we're going to talk about different types of paint. See you guys later. Bye.